All the roads are winding.
Welcome to the show, Ashni. Welcome to your first Earth Speak, but second time on the show. And your first show is still in the podcast feed, so everyone go check it out. But welcome. I'm going to say welcome back. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here with all of y'all. In Earth Speak, it feels really like an aligned time to be connecting.
Thank you. Awesome. So before we begin, would you like to lead us on an invocation?
I would love that. And so I just want to invite you just to settle into wherever you are by just becoming aware of the points of support that your body has. So that means noticing where your body is being held by something else. So a chair, cushion, couch, bed. And as we feel into those points of support, I want to invite us to call in the energies of the elements and the directions, and just want to honor that I've been given this way of centering by my abuela, Ana Itz Papalot, of the Metzli Yololitzin moon dance in Costa Rica, and I'm so honored to be able to share that with you today. So calling on the energies of the East, the guardian Quetzalcoatl, and bringing in this beautiful light that we call the golden light, this golden dawn, this golden energy. And as we're coming out of summer solstice, really continuing to anchor into ourselves and our cellular bodies, this golden light that comes from the direction of the East, Ometeot. And calling in and bringing and inviting the direction of the West, giving thanks to the guardian Chipitotec. This is the direction of water. And as we start today, I hear the water raining down. And I think about the waters that have existed on this earth for time upon time. And so I want to bless, honor, and invite the waters into this conversation. Ometeo. And calling on and inviting the direction of the north. Tetzcatlipoca, the guardian, thanking this energy, the north energy, the ancestral energy, giving thanks and inviting your ancestors, the benevolent ones that walk with you, your spirit guides, your ancestral guides, guardians, fairy spirits, tree spirits, the angelic choir, your spiritual team, however you choose to call these folks who have prepared the way for us, wanting to acknowledge them, wanting to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples who are on this land that I have the honor to be on, the Wampanoag, Mohican peoples, and those Indigenous stewards, caretakers, and lovers of the land that you are on, Ometeo. And calling upon, inviting in the direction of the south, giving thanks to the guardian Wichli Lapochli, the hummingbird, that helps us to find harmony through conflict. So in whatever challenge you might be facing, whatever challenge that might be surrounding your community or family, inviting the energy of the hummingbird to come in and bless this situation. Inviting the energy of the child, blessing and honoring the children in our lives and the children in our heart, mind, body, and soul. Ometeo. And connecting to the direction above, Impalmewani, those near and far, the great blanket of sky that watches over us, the great constellations that guide, direct us, and help us when we have thought we've lost our way. May we remember that we have a place in this wide, expansive universe, and trust that and honor that. Ometeo. And inviting in and honoring this beautiful Mother Earth, Donantzin Klali, the sweetness of the earth that we have the honor to rest upon, that provides for our every material and soul need. Giving thanks to this abundant, patient, infinitely compassionate teacher that is the earth, and thanking this beautiful earth for all that we have the privilege of having access to today. May we walk knowing that we're walking on this beautiful earth body with this body. May we walk in peace and beauty. Ometeo. And the last direction, if you choose to place your hands on your heart, is the Yolot. And this heartbeat, this sacred heartbeat that connects us all through a golden thread, that links all things, reminding us that love is a source. This heartbeat is a source, pumping life through our own bodies and pumping life throughout the celestial, eternal, and infinite existence body. And as we breathe and connect to this YOLO, to this center today, just blessing each and every person that's connected to you through this golden thread of the heart, blessing all of our connections and all of our relations for the highest good, for the greatest good, and the deepest good. Omete. Thank you.
Thank you. What a beautiful invocation and blessing. So would you like to share?
I'd love to share. So before, my name is Sunder Ashni, Kimberly Tiffany Messiah Itzel. I'm the daughter of Cynthia and Alan. I am the daughter of the earth. I'm the mother of my dreams and my visions. I'm the granddaughter of Virgie, Ezekiel, John, and Sarah, the great granddaughter of Labode. And my people, my ancestors, come from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And so I like to say that I was conceived in the islands and born in Brooklyn. And I grew up very much with the lived experience of being a Caribbean woman. The foods that I ate, music that I listened to, the way that I learned to speak and even relate to my family comes from the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, also known as Euromain. That is the ancestral name of that land, Euromain. And so that land is also cared for by the Carib nation. And also on that island, we have the Garifuna people. The Garifuna are a beautiful tribe of people who they wouldn't necessarily say they are matriarchal society. They just call themselves a society that just centers life and source. And so we have the Carib nation, the Garifuna nation, and then also the Arawak nation. My great-great-grandmother on my mother's side is Arawak. And so I have these as my ancestors. And then I also count the earth as my oldest ancestor. The earth, the moon, the stars, the trees, the flowers as my ancestors, the air, the fire, the water as my ancestors.
Thank you. Beautiful. Do you get to go down to the island? And
I went when I was a kid a lot, and I hope that I will get to also as an adult go soon. But as a child, I would go for Carnival. Carnival is a celebration of liberation. We just had Juneteenth here in the States on Saturday, which is a celebration of freedom. And so on the islands, we also have Carnival time. And it's a time to also celebrate our freedom and to celebrate the lushness and the beauty of life through like harvest as well.
Whoa, cool. Well, I hope you get to go back soon too.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
And then where in the world are you now? And who are the people of that land?
So right now I am in Wampanoag, Mohican Territory, which is in the Berkshires in Massachusetts. And I am in Sheffield and stewarding a beautiful space here called MumBet's Freedom Farm. Just thinking about legacy and ancestors. Elizabeth Freeman, also known as MumBet, was a woman that lived in Sheffield in the 1780s and was an enslaved person living in the house of John Ashley. John Ashley was one of the creators or co-creators of something called the Sheffield Declaration. And I like to say that the Sheffield Declaration, I don't know if this is true, but the Sheffield Declaration was actually a precursor to the Declaration of Independence. And so while working in the home of John Ashley, Elizabeth Freeman, MumBet overheard conversations where they were talking about how every man has a right to their freedom. And something happened in the home. Stories are like that. MumBet had a younger sister, and the mistress of the house was a little bit temperamental and tried to strike the sister. The stories are different. And so after that happened, MumBet left the home and ran to the local lawyer's home, who I believe was Sedgwick was the last name. I can't remember the first name right now. And decided to advocate for her freedom, and she won. And this was in the 1780s.
That's so amazing.
Isn't that amazing? And so she kind of paved the way for so many other people, so many other enslaved persons that at that time were still working, in that way, and did not realize, like so many, that they actually were free. And so she advocated for her freedom, and she won, and continued to be a pillar in her community, and providing support also for people who were leaving the area during Shays' Rebellion, which was another really amazing, momentous historical event in this area. And this also, Sheffield is also close to Great Barrington, which is the home of W.E.B. Du Bois, who is the founder of the NAACP. Also down the street, we have the Schumacher Center for New Economics, that was created or founded on the work of E.F. Schumacher, who basically created all of these new forms of economy and was looking at how to have economies that actually served the people and also served humanity, not only humanity, but the earth itself. So this area is so rich. And I believe it is also due to the people who have stewarded this land, which are the Wampanoag Mohican people.
Wow. That's really magical. Is the farm you're on just named after her, or was it like where she lived?
The farm that we're on is named after her. We named the farm after her. And I also want to lift up the Stockbridge Munsee tribe also that inhabits this area as well.
Wow. What a magical liberation is the word. Transformation, liberation. Cool. I love that. And just thinking of new economies. Wow. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking about it. A lot of times people don't really take the time to ask or, recognize, where we're coming from. So it feels really good to just acknowledge that and take a moment to do that.
Mm-hmm. There's so much history. I feel like we could probably talk the whole time just about the history of that area.
Probably. There's so much too. I think that I can't remember the name right now, but there was another there's so many notable figures. And even the connection between MumBet and W.E.B. Du Bois. I was talking to someone recently, and they were saying, well, MumBet was related somehow to W.E.B. Du Bois. I'm not sure the exact relation, but they also have this relationship. And just about, the Black people, that there was but a big population of Black people that actually inhabited and still inhabit this area. And I often think about why this particular area? And I think it just has something to do also with the Indigenous folks of this area. And I think about what was their relationship to, what was the relationship between the Black and the Indigenous nations here, and how did they relate to the ancestors of the trees here, the elemental beings that have lived here. This area has been largely conserved as sort of like a playground for the white elite, class for so much time. And also within that, there have been, not only within that, supporting that has been the efforts, the work, and the love of Black and Indigenous peoples.
And to store it and conserve that land.
Mm-hmm.
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 Wow. All right. I want a whole, I feel like I love just your knowledge of this and passion for it.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I just feel like I'm learning so much. And they have a great organization here in Sheffield, which I didn't realize that these people had these things. So I came here, the Sheffield Historical Society. This guy, Jim, he's been so sweet. And I can call anytime and ask them about stuff. He puts his historical evidence to the side for us,
Wow.
questions. And so I found out that Brooklyn I used to live in Brooklyn, which Canarsie, territory. So like I didn't realize that Brooklyn had a historical society. So like I encourage you, like if you are interested in learning more about where you are and who lived there before the historical events, find out if there is a historical society where you live. There probably is. And if there's not a society, there's definitely people who know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, historians and even, you know, I imagine some of the original people of that land still live there too, and if they haven't been priced out,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, you know, and before you were talking about like we were talking about mycelium networks, and I think about like information and networks and how mycelium and trees and the earth, how they exchange information, not in the same way that we do through words, but they also exchange history. They also hold historical what we call historical, cultural, social evidence and information within their roots. And I believe I believe that these trees that have been here for hundreds of years, that they carry that information, they carry that knowledge, that wisdom, that understanding, and they transmit that to us through their leaves. They transmit that through their sap. They transmit it through their flowers. They transmit it, when the air is blowing through them. And thinking about the language of this land. And even just moving here recently and feeling so embraced and so welcomed, I feel it's part of what those roots are holding, and what these networks of mycelium, maple tree, fern, birch tree, what they're holding and what they're transmitting just by their just standing and being and rooting here for so long.
Totally. Tell us more about, your own adventures in restoring connections with elemental beings, and what do you describe elemental beings as?
So elemental beings, well, what I described, so, I think that they are essences, beings that are connected to different elements. So air, fire, water, earth. So we have tree beings, tree spirits, water spirits, fire spirits, star beings. All of these things in nature have a spirit and an essence. And so I feel like since I was a child, I always kind of had this connection to things that were beyond words. Like people would say things or I would feel things, and I wouldn't necessarily find words to describe them. But in the realm of, just being outside, or like you asked me if I'd ever gone to the islands, going to the island for the first time and feeling the difference in the air, feeling the difference in just the vibration in the island, and then coming back to Brooklyn, realizing that, okay, yes, it's a different environment, but what actually informs that environment? It's the trees, it's the people, it's the foods that those peoples are eating. And just as, the forest has elemental beings, the city also has its own elemental beings. And they don't exist in my belief. Some people believe there are hierarchies to the system, but I don't believe that like a city elemental is better or worse than a forest elemental. They're just different, and they have different purposes. And so ways that I've reconnected to or connected to these elements has just been through so many different ways. But what's coming to me right now is maybe kind of morbid, but I always like to mention my younger brother who passed away, Keon Frazier, through death. And so when I was 11 and Keon was 8, he passed away. He was born with kidney failure and was on dialysis most of his life. And we would have so many adventures, and for one of the first things I remember, or one of the things, because my memory is an interesting thing, but one of the things that I remember as being a child was we had this spirit that we called Looky Looky in the house. And Looky Looky was like a big Stay Puft marshmallow type of spirit. And I just remember like having different instances where we would feel Looky Looky. and I would talk to my parents about it, and people would be like, oh, that's a jumbie, like ghosts kind of, again, they were giving these energies like words and like sort of also a connotation to me as a child, like that I should be afraid of. When Kian passed away, the night before, I had like a couple of premonitory dreams where he came to me. He came to me, the whole scene.
Your brother or Looky came
My
to you?
My brother came to me. My brother came to me in the dream, and how the succession of events like that arrived, that ended in the ambulance arriving, they showed to me in the dream. Then that night I went to one of my Auntie Lenore's house, and I had another dream. And in that dream, he came rushing through the back door, and there was like a golden light coming through, and we were spinning around, and we had this amazing ecstatic experience. So I thought that he was still alive. And the next morning I found that he was not alive. And I think that sort of kind of was like a doorway. I always say that he was like my first teacher, my first master, in letting me know that there was a world that existed beyond our logical understanding. And I began to start to really, from our looky adventures and being scared, after having those dreams and having different experiences with him, both before and then after his death, I started to get really interested in what is this world? What are people not telling me? What are people not telling me? And what is this world that nobody wants to acknowledge or talk about, but I can feel palpably? When I'm walking down and I start singing a song in the air and the wind starts to blow, what is that? It's not just like, some kind of event that you see in a movie and it's like, oh, it's kind of like, oh, that there's an exchange happening, that I'm not just here going through my day just, on my own volition. Yes, I can, but I'm also a part of a matrix and a web of life that is in constant communication and exchange. And the more I am attuned and awakened to that exchange, the more I'm able to communicate. And the ways that we communicate are different than talking. A lot of times, it's mainly through just like listening and kind of like this felt sense of like, you just get like a sense, you get like a hit. Sometimes people call it chills or like a gut instinct. Some people call it intuition. For some people, these ways of reconnecting with or connecting with elementals comes through the senses. Some people see things like, and sometimes I would see looky. Sometimes I might feel it. Other people might have a scent, a smell. So I don't want to say like, okay, this is the only way to reconnect, because I feel like also through my life, I've connected to spirit and to these elemental beings in different ways. And in some moments, it's really drastic. And in a lot of moments, it's very subtle. And so I think I would answer your question by saying listening. Listening is how I connect to those elemental beings, and listening with a curiosity. I'm reading this book, I think I was telling you about it, School of Elemental Beings by Karsten Masse, and I might not be saying her name right, but in the book, Karsten talks about being open to the elemental beings, and how this openness, because the elemental beings, fairies, gnomes, whatever you want to call them, they're here really in deep respect and reverence to humanity, to everything, and humanity is a part of everything. So they're here in deep service and reverence to the earth, and humans are a part of that. But they also honor our free will. And so they won't necessarily communicate or connect with us unless we invite that. And so I think part of that listening with openness and curiosity is like sort of like an invitation. Listening with a sense of curious delight also. It's like, whoa, okay. Like if you think about like looking at clouds, and how there's this like it's a different way of listening. that I think about when I'm looking at a cloud. It's like a combination like of observation, openness, excitement also for what shape the cloud is going to take. So I think I will, I could probably, say a lot more or just continue on my little tangent about that. But I think that this, this way of listening that is more expanded, that involves our entire being and is not limited to an idea or a concept we have, but listening in a way that expands us, expands and opens our heart to this realm of spirit.
I feel like the elemental beings are like, thank you.
Yes.
Right. And so much, I am also in everyday contact with them. And so many of our listeners are. And even, I don't know if this is the same for you, but for your own journey, I mean, it sounds like from a very young age, you kind of had connection with the spirit world, just opened up and sealed, like, boom, like this is that happening. But for a lot of people, has this happened for you of like, oh my gosh, these elementals, these beings, these fairies, the wind spirits, the whatever, have been relegated to fairy tales. And like, oh, they're made up, they're make believe. Also, they've put, throughout the centuries have a lot of like evil put onto them. And like you said, your family would be like, looky, oh, it's just a ghost and putting connotations on it. And like, I've had all these meanings put on it. But have you, in this experience, have you had to like reclaim some of that back to like, no, this isn't just made up. This is actually real. Like what I'm sensing, this connection, this relationship, what I'm sensing here is real and it has depth and meaning and its purpose, and it's different from what society says things should look like or what meaning they put on it. Like, have you had to unpack some of that?
Oh yeah, I mean, because even in my own family, because there is that negative connotation, it was like having to reclaim that this spirit and these elements are actually, again, that they have such a deep respect. They're not trying to hurt anybody, and actually they can't do that unless there is something, they can't do that. I don't want to say, because I don't want to.
Unless there's an invitation, perhaps.
Yeah. But I also want to be careful about that too, because I don't want to necessarily claim or say that people are inviting certain things, because there are ways that people
true right
work with elements and work with magic that can bypass natural law. But I will say in my own family, having to like reclaim some of that, and I think a lot of it actually, strangely enough, I would say it shouldn't be a surprise that patriarchy, white capitalist patriarchal imperialism plays a role in this as well, which is something that, has this like individualism, rugged individualism as a part of it, or like we're doing this on our own. There are no spirits or entities or elements that will help us.
And not even the recognition of nature as a physical thing. Like that doesn't even get like.
Exactly. Anything that we can't control or commodify becomes a threat. And so elements and elemental beings, that they're just free, they're able to travel, they're not bound by time and space, become then a threat to capitalism. And so all of these things that are actually helping and providing everything that we have are now seen as something that's separate from us. And even us acknowledging that our own physical beings are comprised of earth, air, fire, water, and spirit becomes like woo-woo, or becomes like something that's so out there and becomes evil even, to acknowledge that spirit lives and moves through us in a certain way. And I, oftentimes when I lead groundings and things like that, I didn't do it today, but I will say that every single thing that we have is a result of the relationship between earth, air, fire, water, and the spirit that moves them. Every single thing. The computer that we're on right now, our earphones, our jewelry, our clothing, everything that we eat, that we drink, is a result of this spirit and the elemental beings. And so capitalism would have us believe that everything that we have is a result of capital and certain types of labor, which is a lie, straight up. Any material that we have that would even be used within a capitalistic venture exists as a result of the relationship between earth, air, fire, water, and the spirit that moves them. Point blank. Whether or not you want to recognize that, whether or not you acknowledge it, like the chair that you're sitting on, everything. We wouldn't have anything if these essences did not exist. And what is it that allows the tree to grow? You know, what is it that makes the rivers flow? Right? And how would it affect us? How would it affect the way that we live and move through life if everyone had that acknowledgement that there is something that moves through things, that also moves us, that we're connected to, and that connects all things, versus a society, a way of being, a way of moving that says there's only this system that was created by humans that is making everything run and flow, which is capital, which is a lie, in my view.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's part of the reclamation, is just acknowledging that everything that exists is a result, and of that is a result of the relationship between these elements and these elemental beings, and realizing that, or marveling at that, bringing that sense of wonder at that. And also that takes the pressure off of us. That we have these help, that we're not alone in this, Yeah.
Totally. I would say for that spirit aspect, reclaiming that from all the dogma and rules and punishment and everything that religions put on it too, which is part, that the control, the system of capitalism that we live in, and then the, religious control all kind of came hand in hand over a handful of centuries out of, Rome. Thanks, Rome. I do love Italy, though. I freaking love Italy.
Me too.
But, but the systems that, we're still living in that domination system that came out of that. And that was then later that the opportunistic church took over and said, okay, fucking control everything, So yeah, that reclaim. I'm gonna get fired up. This just became one big history lesson.
I know, but then you think about also, how did Rome get to that point too? Because Italy is such a beautiful land, and they also have such a rich culture. Like, there's a woman, her name is Alessandra Belloni, and she does these dances of, like, she does like the Black Madonna, and she does tarantella dances, and she talks about like the richness of the Italian culture, and how they used to have all of these connections to these elemental spirits, the spider being one of them. But what happens when a culture like that gets forgotten or lost? And she's amazing, Alessandra, in really bringing forward and lifting up that tradition that is before, the Rome, or maybe, I think that it still exists. So these things also exist in parallel, but they're suppressed. But what happened in Rome, they also were a society that connected their goddesses, the deities that they honored were also at some point connected to elements. Yeah. All of these things were at some point connected to elements and the spirit of nature. And it's not an evil, people want to say, pagan, all whatever they want to say about it, but it's like, what's evil? We freaking live and walk on the earth. Like, what?
Well, that's that Christian propaganda to make it evil so that you don't pay attention to the old religion anymore, so that you convert. And
so you can then sell and capitalize off of that, which,
yeah, it's the ultimate marketing.
Exactly. Like, and I think about Indigenous tribes when we say, everything is our family, like brother tree, father sky, mother earth, and separating people from that way of relating. Because are you going to sell off your brother? Are you going to sell your mother? It becomes much easier to sell your mother or sell your brother when you're not identifying them as such. But if the water is your relation, If the water is your family, then how are you going to commodify your water? If the air is the stars are your family and your sky, if the tree is your relative, you're going to think much more, you're going to think twice before cutting it down. And that slows up production, And so I think about all of these things, like the religion that we're talking about is all about, commodification. And if we can restore this connection to these elemental beings through, we talked about listening, but also the acknowledgement that they are our family, that they are our relations, that they're our family. They support us. They love us. They want to see us grow and flower and continue to enjoy this life on earth, amidst, the challenges of what it means to be a being that has been anchored into this earth realm. They understand that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 And when you think, your tree is your brother and you think twice about cutting it down and it slows you down, it also that commodity to relational paradigm shift is also inherently fills the gaps, the illusions of disconnection that the commodification, that the consumerism, that the capitalism ideals said, oh, you have to fill this gap by buying things. Instead, when you have that relation, there is no gap anymore because it's connection. And so it's like two levels here.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's all about it. It's connection. It's connected, that we're connected to something. Even when we don't know we're connected because we're all walking on the earth. And the earth is actually being held together by this beautiful network of mycelium, roots, flowers, all of them. Like when I've been working in the earth at our farm here, and I'm actually connecting with the soil and preparing to plant, and I'm actually seeing the roots and seeing these roots are literally holding the earth together. And that is happening on a global scale, all across. I think it's just, I can't stop thinking about how fucking amazing that is. Pardon my.
That's really cool. Oh, you can, bring it.
How amazing that is, that actually this building is able to stand because there's a network of roots underneath it that are holding it up. We wouldn't be able to even have buildings or homes or anything if the roots weren't there. So how are we going to deny that relationship and deny that connection? It's all about this connection, and that how wherever we are on the earth, we're all being held by that connection, by that network that we take we can't really see unless we take the time to get down and touch it.
Right. Yeah. You're taking me down to a microscopic level now. I'm like, ooh, bonds and roots and mycelium and da-da-da-da. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's all get in the magic school bus, kids. Oops.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about what your relationship with these elements looks like in your day-to-day life too. What's going on?
Mm-hmm. In my everyday life, I mean, it's I drink my water. I drink my water.
Legit.
I just talk to the water, In the morning, I wake up and the birds are there and I sing and they sing with me, The relationship is walking on this earth and just breathing this air. I don't think it's just so basic. It's the basicness and, that's the slowing down enough to realize and acknowledge oh, this water. I was going on a hike not recently, within the past couple of months, and it was during the winter. And we went up to this waterfall, and then we bushwhacked up to the waterfall until we saw the rocks sweating. And one of the people I was with, I think his name is Zach, Jeremy, and Heather had stopped, but we were up there. And we were talking about like, wow, like how the source of water and how the water was being formed. And I remember like we were talking about like the pressure and like how the rocks would sweat and how that sweat from the rocks, all those little droplets, they led to that little pot, that little pool. And then that pool like fed into the waterfall. And I started to think about like a lot more about the water, and the water here is just amazing. And one of the 13 grandmothers, she would say that we are water babies, and she talked about the importance of speaking to the water. And some of my other elders and teachers also talked about water as water as a divine and intelligent being, which it is. I'm actually co-creating a piece right now. I'm a part of a project called Rites of Passage that's created by a beautiful woman. Her name is Pooja Prema. And she invited me to do a room. The whole Rites of Passage it's a big house. It's going to be in Pittsfield. It's happening in August. And it is a room of 65 women of color that are all coming together to fill the rooms of this house. And I'm curating, because we're all curators, not like a curator, but like curators. We're like bringing forth the cure.
The healing.
Yes. So I'm curating a room called Woman Heal Thyself, and it's all about water. And it's all about how when we speak to the water, and maybe you're familiar with Masaru Emoto and his work about messages in the hidden messages in water. When we speak to the water, when we connect to the water, we actually change the molecular structure of the water. So simple things, and they do this in the Ifa tradition too. Simple things of like speaking into your water, that changes something in the water. And when you take that in, it's like this exchange, that connection, that relationship. You then take that into your body. At some point, it's going to come out. It's going to go down into the earth, and that's going to connect to the other waters. And so, just thinking about ways that I relate on a daily level, it's just drinking my water. It's just a way that I choose to walk upon the earth with gratitude. My abuela Ana, who I mentioned earlier, Ana eats papalot, she would say, she gave us some really beautiful teachings at the beginning of the pandemic. And one of them was, before you even get out of bed, when you take your first 3 steps out of bed, you say thank you 3 times. So it's just kind of like these very simple things. It doesn't need to be like it can be. People do whole rituals. People create beautiful altars. We can do all of that. And like, I love that you asked me, what's the day-to-day thing? Because I think sometimes people feel like, they have to do something big. But it's the smallest thing, And I feel like the elemental beings, they express their delight at that. Just our delight at being able to drink water, our delight in being able to wake up another day and walk on the earth, our delight at seeing a seed, sprout through the ground. It's like, as working on the farm and like, planting the seeds in the earth and like being like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then just seeing the little sprout come up, those are the day-to-day things, and I would say to anybody and everybody listening, like, it's very simple. What are the ways that you feel to connect with the elemental beings? Because they're open to whatever way, what ways do you connect? So I might speak to my water. You might speak to your dogs. You might speak to your plants. You might roll around on the grass, like whatever. Just acknowledging the connection is so important.
I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, thank you. And like for me, I love how it doesn't have to be elaborate. And like for me in the morning, I just say I welcome earth, air, fire, water, and of course the divine and my guides and all. Like I had to do a whole simple invocation while I'm walking my dog or on the toilet or whatever. And just like it doesn't have to be fancy or anything. You don't have to put on like certain clothes or do protocols. Just invitation and I've heard you say this word a lot, acknowledgement, and that's so powerful.
And I also want to lift up, acknowledge the protocols that do exist, because there are
Yeah,
people and there are indigenous stewards and people who carry medicines, and their protocols also have provided the space for us to maintain and sustain and cultivate these relationships with our relations. So I want to lift up all of those carriers of those ancient protocols that have, also, many of them have suffered in order to continue to practice their protocol in the way that they have. So I just want to honor and lift them up too.
Right. Yeah. And they're not wrong or bad. And it's, yeah, all, whatever way you feel called to, that you have sacred reciprocal permission to engage with, let's go for it. Yeah. Yeah. Something I have to go here. You said, thinking of like, drinking the water and then we release it. I'm like, yeah, making your pee sacred. Like how cool, like, if you're blessing the water that you're taking in and blessing the water in your body, and that water is going to come out of you blessed into the sewer.
Exactly. And I mean, people think about like, our bodily fluids as something, whatever, but the way that seeds travel through the air.
Poopy.
They also travel through freaking animal poop. So
Yeah.
you know what? And that's how seeds get from place to place. So
they are smart seeds.
Very smart, super intelligent, more intelligent, seed intelligence is just, beyond.
Yeah, totally. Oh, wow. I just got like swept away into a whole, whoa. Seed intelligence. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. And that reminds me too, like, do you work with like offerings? And,
oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. I want to say one thing before we get into yours, is because what made me think of it is our bodily fluids. And sometimes, like around where I live, there's ecosystems that if we leave out food or something, it could attract the wrong kind of animals that actually are preying on, animals that maybe their populations are at risk. And so I don't like to always leave food out, which I love leaving food for nature spirits, but I'll bless, I'll spit and I'll just be like, I share my water with the earth and these beings and love through this water vibration. So like simple offerings, but I'd love to hear about your relationship with offerings.
Well, I mean, I love that because I think that also in your spit, it's like, that's like the same way that water holds a cellular molecular structure, every bodily fluid that we have, including your spit, your urine, your blood, your shit, all of that holds material that pertains to your particular being and body. And when you are putting that, whatever it is, into the earth, that's like, you're speaking. And so I feel like, I'm bleeding right now. And so I'd love to talk about blood offerings. And, I collect my blood. I think that someone said once, I heard somewhere, that the reason that all the fighting and war started to happen was because women stopped offering their blood to the earth. Because, blood is a sacred life force, and, that the energies kind of feed off of that, and not in like a malicious way, but because it's life. And so
like composting almost.
Exactly. Like, you take a cow shit or chicken manure, you cure it, you feed that into your compost, and that actually has certain chemicals and things that feeds the soil. It's not like a morbid, morose, or a gross thing. And so the same way of like connecting to our blood as a woman, collecting it and making offerings. In the moon dance, again, my Ana Itzpapalot and one of my dear sisters, Aisha Michal, she led my first time doing an offering ceremony, and we opened up the earth with permission, and we made a beautiful altar, and women of all ages made offerings. So we did offerings of our moon. And then we also, so the older women who were no longer under moon, they made offerings of their hair. Again, because the particles and strands of our hair hold information, hold our cellular structure. And so I think about offerings. Yes, you can leave food. People leave all sorts of things. But when we leave things that come from our own being, that come from our own body, it's almost like a signature. It's almost like we're saying, like, here, this is me doing that. I think about, spirit plates, and I would always be like, well, why does spirit get such a little plate? Some people make big ones. I was taught to like make little ones.
One bite of each food, right?
Like a little bit of each food. I'm like, how come spirit, can only eat a little bit? And then I think again about cellular molecular stuff. If we're thinking about food, like as a primarily as a cellular thing, and that each structure, the cellular structure of something, contains information. then spirit only needs a little bit of this information to get the nourishment. If we're thinking about food as nourishment, that's feeding certain things within our bodies and our beings, then spirit only needs that little bit. We've come to a little bit far in that, we have like these extravagant meals, but spirit acknowledges that the information that they need to sustain themselves, to continue going, to inform the way that they move is only a little bit, might be a particle. And so I think about like having this signature of your own being an important thing. I mean, and even if you offer something like food or tobacco, you're still touching it. And so some people blow on it. Some people put their breath. You think about the air particles or the water particles that touch that tobacco from your breath, again, is a signature. And so like, yeah, again, in the same way that there's so many ways to connect, there's so many different ways to offer. Sometimes I make offerings of songs, Sometimes my offering is silence. Sometimes my offering is tobacco. Sometimes my offerings are crystals. Sometimes my offerings are laughter, smiles, hugging a tree. There's so many different ways to make offerings. And again, I think it's unique to each moment. And it's not limited by anything, limited by any idea in our minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'd love to hear, to a listener, what would you say to a listener who's perhaps like, well, why would you even make an offering to something that can't eat it or can't, why make offerings?
Well, my immediate response was like, why not? Because it's a gift. It's like asking the tree, why would you give fruit to that person? The tree's just doing it. Why would you even grow? But, again, like, that's my like kind of like.
Well, the tree's giving fruit because we'll eat the fruit and poop out the seeds. It'll make more tree babies. So
exactly. But, that's true. That is very true. That is very true. But I don't think the tree is thinking about that.
It's also sweetness.
Yeah, it's like the sweetness. I would just say because why not? Because everything that we're given is a gift.
Yes.
Everything that we're given is a gift. So again, going back to white capitalist patriarchal imperialism, it's like versus like, everything is here to serve us.
Yeah.
Yes, in some way, yes, we're in service to each other, but it's also a gift. Why not say thank you? An offering is a thank you. An offering is an acknowledgement that this didn't have to happen. You didn't have to wake up today. You didn't have to walk onto the earth. The trees didn't have to give you fruit. The vegetables didn't have to grow. All of these things didn't have to happen. An offering is just like a way of acknowledging, oh, like this exists and this also has life. It has an essence. It has its own purpose and its own life cycle to get pooped out and like give birth to some more tree babies. But as a result of it living, breathing, growing, and bringing that fruit, bearing that fruit, I get to enjoy. So why not make an offering? And yeah, as just like, maybe prayers. I think about growing up, and like my mom, inviting us to pray before our meals and kind of things like that. It's like we didn't have to have food. The earth didn't have to give us food in that way. It didn't have to reach our plates, but we can acknowledge that it didn't just come from nowhere. This came from the effort of elementals, humans, and so many other seen and unseen forces all together. So it's just this acknowledgement also of this amazing matrix, this amazing world that we're a part of. And why not take a moment to acknowledge it? Because it doesn't have to be that way.
I love that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So much beauty. So tell us about what you're doing on this farm.
Oh my gosh. So this farm is amazing. So my co-creators, co-collaborators are Steph Wiley, who is a co-owner of the cooperative called Brooklyn Packers, and Tiara Wright. And they are just we have had this collective and individual vision together and apart for like over a decade. And so MumBet's Freedom Farm is a cooperatively run farm. And so part of what we're doing is just exploring what connection is and what interdependence looks like. And this living, walking, breathing realization and understanding that we are not alone and that we are in relationship to the earth and to each other, and learning how to be in good relationship, and restoring connection to land, to home, to ourselves. And so the MumBet's Freedom Farm is a farm and sanctuary where people can cultivate and find home. And we do that through farming, through different programs, and also because we're establishing a sense of home on the farm with our physical homes, but also giving folks the space to explore what home can look like when we find home within ourselves, and doing that through connecting to the earth, and through cultivating and restoring relationship to these elements of earth, fire, air, water, and spirit that connects them.
I love that.
Yeah, and so we're growing stuff. We are growing, kalaloo. I'll talk about kalaloo because that's my ancestral food. Kalaloo is a green. If you haven't had it, I highly recommend it.
What family is it in?
Kalaloo is in, I think it's a grain. I think it's amaranth, people know it as. But you can eat the leaves, and it's like spinach-like. I would say even more tender. It's super tender. And growing up, I would eat kalaloo soup. Kalaloo soup is a green soup that they put fish in, and it was one of my favorite soups. And it's just it's very prolific. People think of it as a weed, so some people chop it down, but it is a vital food. And when I connect to the spirit of amaranth, I connect to a joyful, resilient, and strong spirit that is able to feed us the fuel that we need to continue to move and live and thrive within environments that can be very challenging. So we're growing kalaloo, we're growing collards, we're growing kale, we got radishes we're harvesting now, cucumber, herbs, garlic, tons of flowers because I'm a flower essence therapist, and just so much more. So, and just doing so much. It's so many different things. So if you want to find out more, we have a website, mumbetsfreedomfarm.com, so you can check that out.
Of course, that'll be in the show notes too, everybody. You can click it there. Oh, awesome. And I'd love to hear about your kind of day-to-day life there. Like, what do you like do? How do you actually go about doing this?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. How am I doing this?
Does anyone know what they're doing?
I know.
I don't think so.
I think we're all learning. I mean, I think that's a part of it. Is that, I'm an Aries, so I'm very much like
Just do it.
in some ways. But I have an Aquarius moon, which, softens me a little bit. So for me, the most important things are like waking up with that sense of gratitude in the morning. I sing in the morning. I'm in a tent right now, so I don't have my water altar, but I connect with the water daily. And then, going straight to the farm, seeing what needs to be weeded, watered, trying to do that before like 10, because at 10, I start to, see clients, do stuff for Minka. Minka Brooklyn is another organization, amazing collective that I work for that works at the intersections of healing and social justice. And so I try to get all the things in the morning done in the morning time, also before the sun gets too hot. And then doing like my work for clients and things like that. And then going back to the farm, building, thinking about building the house. We built a kitchen down there. So it's like, building the kitchen, getting the yurt together. We also share meals here. So cooking, eating together is a big part of the day. We were in a pod here at this beautiful space that I'm at called Racebrook Lodge. And I was in a pod with amazing people, and I love them dearly. And we've kind of like shifted because the lodge is reopening, but we were also having like movie night and spa night karaoke, where we would like put face masks on and soak our feet and sing karaoke, and that's like the heart child of a beautiful sister, Jeannie Tsai. She's an amazing filmmaker, a photographer. So like, having art nights and things like that. And so every day looks different, and every day involves like learning, that I don't know everything and I can't do it alone. And actually, that is the greatest blessing that I could ever ask for. I don't need to know everything, and I wouldn't ever want to do any of this alone.
Yeah. I feel like that's such a beautiful way to put it. I can't do it alone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked at all about tapping. Do you want to? I mean, it's cool.
It's a whole other. So, I mean, I would say, we're talking about connections, right? And we're talking about mycelium.
Yep.
We're talking about networks. And so, tapping, also known as EFT, stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And I think about like emotions as energy in motion. And it's energy, these are things that also are connectors, things that connect our ideas about something to our actions. So the way we feel about something informs how we act, how we think about things. And so EFT really informs us and gives us a resource so that we can ride the waves, so that we can understand the connections and not get so identified. It's not like I am angry, but I feel angry. Or not I am sad, I'm feeling sadness. And being able to ride the waves of what it is that we're moving through. So that's what I'll be teaching in a few months with you all, tapping in, somatics and EFT for resilience. And there might be another title for it, but that's usually what I call it. And, both somatics and EFT, somatic experiencing in particular, because that's what I'm trained in, really provides us with toys, as Resma Menakem would say, to regulate our nervous systems. And so tapping is one way we can regulate, through actually tapping on different parts of our body, connecting to the networks of energy within our body, and also using certain words and phrases to understand what it is that we're saying to ourselves and how it is that we're relating to our emotional states. And the somatics piece is really about getting to know ourselves and our responses, and normalizing our responses versus demonizing ourselves for feeling and acting out in a certain way, and understanding that the ways that we have learned to act are learned, and part of it is as a result of conditioning. And in order to start to undo some of that stuff, we first need to bring this awareness to it. And not an awareness that is critical, but awareness that has that compassion and understanding for ourselves, and the world that we have been born into, which is a world that, in some ways has really, rather than invite us to have these connections, has invited more of a separatism and an individualism, versus understanding how all of our systems work together, how our mind, body, heart work together, and they can work together. So EFT and somatic experiencing really sort of help to restore this equilibrium and regulation, and understanding to how our mind, heart, body, and spirit can work together efficiently, effectively, joyfully, authentically, really.
So it sounds like the way you approach EFT and somatics is really around, like you said, toys. I guess it's like toys play there, and how they can help us heal and be liberated from the illusions of separation that we've been kind of handed down through the whole, all the history we've just talked about in this episode, through all these systems and control and everything. So yeah, really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, and that comes really, Resma Menakem, who wrote My Grandmother's Hands, which is an amazing book about racialized trauma. says toys because tools are used to fix something.
Ooh, I love that.
And says that we're not broken. And toys are something that we can use to explore, that we can play with. And so if you want to learn more about that context, I invite you to dive deeper into his work. He's brilliant.
Awesome. And play is the way, I mean, okay, this was full circle because my relationship with the elemental beings is all about, they're like play. Play is in itself such a healing energy to be in. It's just, yeah. And, we've been so conditioned to like work, effort, fix, tools. And it's a whole mindset. And those words themselves keep us in that mindset such that we can't even see that we're perpetuating more of the system in these things that we think we're doing to heal. And it's kind of bizarre when you're like, wait, whoa, woo. So I love that, these words are powerful.
Mm-hmm. Words are very powerful. And that phrase comes up. I can't remember. The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And it's like, well, what about toys? What if we had toys in the master's house, and what would that do if we, just filled it with like all these new toys, because like those tools, it's like, again, it's like understanding that. Yeah, I really just think it's so important to understand that, or to say that the connections have never been broken between us and the elemental world. We just have to use play and this, this sort of curiosity and openness and awe and wonder, and, talking about how words are important and how words are so vital. It's like, you think about a word like awful and how that word was like derived and modified, because actually, if you break it down, the words awe and full, it's full of awe. But now how it has come to be something that's a negative, how being full of awe for nature, for life, reverence for this existence has become something that's kind of looked down upon, And I think that we need to restore that playfulness, and restore that sense of like, we're all learning here, And I know that that's something that I work on too. I'm not perfect at it too. And, learning just to be playful. It's something that I strive towards every day, to be in awe.
I love that. I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm unlearning a lot every day to feel that. Oh man. I want to talk about flowers with you, but I'm feeling maybe a secret episode on that. You game?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's wrap this up. And what do you offer? You say you work with clients. What do you offer and where can people find you?
People can find me on my website, sunderashni.com or mumbetsfreedomfarm.com. You could probably find me on the farm. Just come on down to the farm. Seriously, we have work days every day. And we actually are looking for, like, if you want to come and camp and support and learn how to connect with the earth and learn about connecting to the elemental beings, please come and visit us. I work with clients doing somatic experiencing and flower essence therapy. And that sometimes I do incorporate Tarot and EFT and light language, which, are a whole bunch of other things that I could talk to you more about. Right now, I am limiting my client base just because I have so much work on the farm. And, I invite people who want to work with me to have a commitment of 3 months or more. And yeah, I'll be doing some retreats also. So starting in September, I'll be doing some retreats in person as I sort of move more towards doing group work. Just because, having a farm and seeing clients is a lot. So I invite you to just come here. We can go for a walk together, and work together in that way, and plant some seeds or harvest some flowers. And we can work together in that way. And if you want to work with me therapeutically, you can reach out.
Amazing. Beautiful. And I'll just say here, with my therapist, I found my therapist because I was looking for someone doing somatic experiencing, and I love it. And I think if someone's looking for that, somatic therapy, that's now you know where to go.
Here I am, woman of color doing somatic experiencing.
Right here.
Right here.
And plus you're versed in intuition and magic and spirit, which is so powerful. That's, yeah. Really cool. Awesome. Well, all of that's linked in the show notes, of course. And so people can go over to your email list and hang out with you and go to your website, sign up, hire you, do some good work, and yeah, connect with the farm and stuff. Very cool. Well, you're going to come and do a workshop with us pretty soon, and for the collective, and workshops are collective only now. So if y'all want to get in on it, you know where to go. And yeah, and we're going to be exploring those EFT and somatics, and of course magic runs through everything you do, and y'all be hearing more about it soon. So very cool. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us today. And
thank you. See you. This was an amazing, fun, juicy conversation. So thank you so much. It's been such a good time.
Thank you. And thanks to all the spirits you've called in, and to the elemental beings for coming playing with us today.
I also want to just, give thanks to our hearts and, to the earth, to the sky, to the south, the child in us, to our ancestors, to the spirit of the west and the east, and just thank them for being a part of this conversation, and for just being such a blessing in our lives, and reminding us of where we are, who we are, and of the good relationships we can have. Give thanks.
So much gratitude. Thank you.
All the roads are windy.
Listen to over 200 free Earthspeak podcast episodes on your favorite podcast app, and visit earthspeak.love to learn about our collective community and workshops.